Awakening of the Harbinger. The universe had forgotten what true power looked like. For countless millennia, the various sentient species of the Galactic Confederation had built their empires on the bones of ancient civilizations, never questioning what forces had shaped the cosmos before them. They excavated ruins on dead worlds, studied anomalous energy patterns, and theorized about the precursors who had seemingly vanished without explanation. But they never came close to the truth, until they found Eden 7. Admiral Joe Cole of the Confederation flagship Eternal Vigilance stood before the viewing portal, his 4 arms crossed behind his back, all 6 eyes fixed on the unremarkable blue-green planet that hung in the darkness before them. According to all scans, Eden 7 was utterly ordinary, a habitable world with basic flora and fauna, standard gravity, breathable atmosphere. Yet something about it had triggered every warning system in the Confederation's vast network of sensors. 3 more ships have arrived. Admiral reported his second-in-command, a slender Lorian with silver skin. The Council is growing impatient for answers. Joe Cole's upper mouth tightened. The Council always wants answers without understanding the questions. He turned away from the viewport. What do the deep scans show? Nothing new, sir. The anomaly remains centered at these coordinates. A holographic map shimmered to life, highlighting a small island in Eden 7's northern hemisphere. Energy readings are inconsistent. They appear to be both organic and artificial simultaneously. And the humans, have they responded to our communications? No, Admiral. Their colony on Eden 7 maintains silence. However, we've detected multiple encrypted transmissions between the colony and Earth. Joe Cole had dealt with humans before. Strange creatures, physically unimpressive, technologically middling. Yet somehow they had carved out respect among the older species of the Confederation. They were newcomers to interstellar travel, barely 2 centuries into their expansion, yet they behaved with the quiet confidence of a species far older. Prepare a landing party, he decided. I want representatives from each member species, and arm them, discreetly. The Lorian hesitated. Sir, Confederation protocol requires permission from local authorities before. This is not a diplomatic mission, Commander. This is an investigation into a potential threat to galactic security. 6 hours later, Joe Cole stood with the landing party on Eden 7's surface. The human colony was small, perhaps 3. Reeves approached the cylinder, placing her hand against its surface. You misunderstand. We aren't keeping him here. We're protecting you from him. She turned to face the landing party. Or we were, until your fleet's presence activated the final sequence. The fluid in the cylinder began to drain. What have you done? Joe Cole stepped forward, hand moving to his weapon. Nothing. This was always going to happen. Reeves stepped back from the cylinder. The precursors you've all wondered about for so long, they weren't a civilization. They were gods. Entities of pure cosmic power who shape reality according to their will. The last of the fluid drained away. The human inside opened his eyes. They warred among themselves for dominion over creation. Reeves continued. The conflict nearly destroyed all existence. In the end, they realized they could not be allowed to exist in their pure form. So they created vessels, physical bodies to contain and temper their power. The cylinder began to rise. Humans, whispered the Lorian commander in sudden understanding. Reeves nodded. We were designed for this purpose, to house divinity without being consumed by it. The gods became mortal, their memories suppressed, their powers dormant, until needed again. The man stepped forward, water dripping from his ordinary human form. He appeared physically unremarkable, average height, ordinary features, not particularly muscular. Only his eyes suggested something more, ancient, knowing, infinitely deep. This is Adam Shepard, Reeves said, though that's just the name of his human vessel. What he contains is something much older. Shepard gazed at the aliens, his expression neither hostile nor friendly. "You shouldn't have come in such numbers," he said, his voice perfectly normal yet somehow resonating through the chamber. It was interpreted as aggression. "By whom?" demanded Jokal. "By what's inside me." Shepard closed his eyes briefly. It's been sleeping for so long, dreaming of stars being born and dying. And now it's waking up. The chamber's lights flickered. The strange symbols on the walls began to glow brighter. "You need to leave," Reeves urged the landing party. "Return to your ships. Move beyond this system's heliosphere." "We are the Confederation," Jokal stated firmly. "We do not flee from threats. If this being represents danger to galactic peace, it must be contained or neutralized." A sad smile crossed Shepard's face. "I'm not a threat, Admiral. I'm a harbinger." "Of what?" "Judgment." The word echoed with sudden force, rippling through the chamber like a physical wave. Several members of the landing party staggered backward. "The old gods are returning," Shepard continued, his voice taking on layers of harmonic resonance. "Not as conquerors, but as arbiters. The cosmic balance has been disturbed. Species that should have remained in harmony have turned to conquest, to extinction of the weak, to despoiling of worlds." His eyes began to glow with inner light. "I am the first to awaken, but not the last. Humanity carries the divine spark, each of us a potential vessel, and now the time has come for the vessels to fulfill their purpose." Jokal felt something he had never experienced before, a primal fear that transcended rational thought. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, to put as much distance as possible between himself and this human who was somehow more than human. "The Confederation has maintained peace for 10,000 cycles," he argued, fighting to keep his voice steady. "We've prevented wars, shared resources, preserved countless species." "You've done these things," agreed Shepard, "and committed atrocities in the same breath. The Xendi extinction, the enslavement of pre-spaceflight species, the genetic manipulation of servant races." He shook his head. "The gods see all. They remember all. And they have awakened to set things right." The chamber began to tremble. Lines of energy coursed through the walls, the floor, the ceiling, converging on Shepard. "I'm sorry," he said, and it seemed he truly meant it, "but judgment comes for all." Reeves grabbed Jokal's arm. "You need to leave. Now. When it fully manifests." Too late. Shepard's form blurred, his outline becoming indistinct as light poured from his eyes. His mouth, every pore of his being. He rose from the floor, suspended in midair as the transformation began. "Return to your ships," his voice boomed, now entirely inhuman. "Tell the Confederation what you have witnessed. Tell them humanity remembers its divine purpose." The last thing Jokal saw before the emergency teleport activated was Shepard's human form dissolving into pure light, reshaping itself into something ancient and terrible and beautiful beyond comprehension. As the landing party materialized aboard the Eternal Vigilance, alarms blared throughout the ship. On every screen, sensors registered massive energy spikes emanating from Eden 7. "All ships, full retreat," Jokal ordered, "beyond the system boundary." But even as the Confederation fleet began to move, a wave of energy burst from the planet's surface. Not destructive, but transformative. It passed through ships, through beings, through matter itself, leaving everything fundamentally changed on a quantum level. And in its wake, a message echoed in the mind of every sentient being in the system. The gods have returned, and humanity walks among them. The divine reckoning. Chaos erupted across Confederation space in the days following what would later be called the Eden Manifestation. The diplomatic channels overflowed with demands for explanation, threats of retaliation, and desperate pleas for unity. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session that lasted 17 standard cycles without interruption. Admiral Jokal stood before them all, his testimony playing on repeat throughout the proceedings. It wasn't a weapon, he insisted for the 100th time. It wasn't a threat in the conventional sense. It was Awakening. The human didn't attack us. He transformed. High Counselor Vrax of the Thracian hegemony slammed his crystalline appendage against the chamber floor. Semantics. The humans have concealed the existence of a power that could destabilize the entire Confederation. This is an act of war. War against what? Countered Representative Silnea of the Lorian Collective, her silver skin reflecting the chamber's lights. If the Admiral's report is accurate, we would be declaring war not against humans, but against gods using human vessels. The word gods sent a ripple of unease through the assembly. In the center of the chamber, a holographic projection displayed the latest data from observatories monitoring Earth and its colonies. No aggression had been detected, no fleet movements. But something far more unsettling had begun, a subtle change in all human biosignatures, detectable even at a distance. Something was happening to them, one by one. They were changing. On Earth, Dr. Ilara Kim stood on the roof of the Global Defense Headquarters, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of crimson and gold. 3 days had passed since Adam Shepard's transformation, and with each passing hour, she felt the stirring within her own body intensify. "It's happening faster than we predicted," said Director Marcus Chen, joining her at the railing. "The signals from Eden 7 have reached every human colony. The awakening cascade has begun." Ilara nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The memories flooding her consciousness weren't her own. They belonged to something ancient that had slumbered within her DNA since birth, waiting for this moment. "The Confederation has quarantined all human systems," Chen continued. "They're scared." "They should be," Ilara whispered, her voice carrying harmonic undertones that hadn't been there yesterday. "What's coming isn't something their weapons can stop." Chen studied her face. "How much do you remember now?" She closed her eyes, accessing memories that spanned billions of years. Everything. The first wars between the gods. The sundering of reality. The decision to bind ourselves to immortal form. She opened her eyes, now gleaming with inner light. "We were dying, Marcus. Our conflict was destroying the very fabric of existence. Becoming human was our salvation and our penance. And now the balance has tipped too far. The younger races have repeated our mistakes. Creation itself cries out for intervention." She looked at her hands, watching as subtle patterns of light moved beneath her skin. "We will not destroy. We will correct. The Confederation won't see it that way. It doesn't matter how they see it. What matters is what they do next." She turned to face him fully. "The Council has 3 choices. Accept our judgment, attempt to resist, or what? Precipitate their own destruction." In deep space, at the edge of Confederation territory, the United Fleet assembled, nearly 6,000 vessels representing every major species. At its center, the Leviathan-class dreadnought Indomitable will serve as command center for what many believe would be the most important military operation in Confederation history. Supreme Commander Drax-4 of the Krell studied the tactical displays. The quarantine line around human space remained unbroken, but sensors detected unusual activity from within. Energy patterns, unlike anything in Confederation records, radiated from Earth and its colonies, patterns that seemed to bend space-time itself. "The Council has authorized deployment of end-space disruptors," announced his tactical officer. "If the humans attempt to breach quarantine, we can collapse their warp fields." Drax-4's mandibles clicked in displeasure. End-space disruptors have never been field-tested. The potential for catastrophic side effects has been deemed acceptable given the circumstances, interrupted Counselor Vrax, entering the command deck. The crystalline being glittered under the harsh lights. "The humans have concealed their true nature for centuries while infiltrating our institutions, our trade networks, our diplomatic corps. With respect, Counselor, we have no evidence of hostile intent," Drax-4 countered. "Admiral Joe Cull's report suggests this transformation is as new to most humans as it is to us. A convenient story. Tell me, Commander, Can you guarantee that these divine vessels pose no threat to the Confederation? Drax 4 couldn't, and both knew it. Then we must act decisively. Vrax moved to the central console, using his authority to access the fleet-wide communication system. This is High Counselor Vrax. All vessels are hereby ordered to advance to secondary containment positions. Prepare end-space disruptors for immediate deployment. Protest died in Drax 4's throat as alarms suddenly blared across the command deck. Multiple anomalies detected, shouted the sensor officer. Spacetime distortions forming within the quarantine zone. On the main viewer, ripples appeared in the fabric of space, not the familiar patterns of ships entering or exiting warp, but something far more fundamental. Reality itself seemed to fold, creating apertures that defied conventional physics. And through these apertures came the Harbingers. They appeared human in basic form, but surrounded by coronas of energy that shifted through spectrums visible and invisible. Their movements left trails of distorted spacetime, like tears in reality that sealed themselves in their wake. Leading them was a figure Drax 4 recognized from the reports. Adam Shepard, the first to transform, now barely recognizable as human. His form seemed both physical and energy simultaneously, a perfect fusion of matter and divine power. The Confederation fleet's automated defense systems activated instantly, firing thousands of high-energy projectiles and directed energy weapons at the approaching Harbingers. The attack simply ceased to exist upon reaching them. Not deflected, not absorbed. The energy and matter comprising the attacks were unmade, as if they had never been fired at all. "This is Adam Shepard, first Harbinger," came a voice across all communication channels simultaneously. "The time for judgment has come. The Confederation's quarantine is hereby dissolved. Your fleets will stand down. We will not bow to threats." Vrax's voice shook with rage or fear, perhaps both. "Deploy the end-space disruptors. All ships, concentrate fire." The massive devices activated, projecting fields designed to collapse the higher spatial dimensions that permitted faster-than-light travel. In theory, they should have rendered the Harbinger's abilities inert, forcing them back into conventional physics. Instead, the disruptors themselves collapsed, imploding into singularities that winked out of existence moments later. "Your weapons cannot affect us," Shepard continued, his voice resonating with power that transcended the limitations of sound. "We do not exist solely in the dimensions you perceive. We are the architects of those dimensions." Around the fleet, space itself began to ripple and shift. Stars seemed to move, their positions altering subtly as fundamental constants were adjusted. For too long, the Confederation has maintained order through oppression masked as peace, Shepard declared. "You have engineered the extinction of species deemed inconvenient. You have harvested the resources of worlds without regard for their natural balance. You have corrupted the very harmony we created before withdrawing into our mortal vessels." The Harbingers spread out, each taking position near one of the fleet's command ships. They made no aggressive moves, yet their mere presence caused system failures and gravitational distortions throughout the vessels. "We do not come to destroy," a female Harbinger announced. Dr. Ilara Kim, transformed into something beyond human understanding. "We come to restore balance, to guide, to correct." Drax 4 found his voice at last. "What gives you the right to judge us? What authority grants you power over civilizations that have stood for millennia?" "We created the conditions that allowed those civilizations to arise," Shepard replied simply. "When we bound ourselves to human form, we established the cosmic parameters that permitted life to flourish. We are not claiming authority. We are resuming responsibility." The Harbingers raised their hands in unison. Throughout the fleet, weapon systems went offline. Propulsion failed. Communications channels filled with static, all except those broadcasting the Harbinger's message. "The age of unchecked expansion ends today," Shepard declared. "The age of true balance begins." 3 standard months later, representatives from every Confederation species gathered on Earth, not as conquerors or prisoners, but as witnesses. They stood beneath the open sky of a planet most had never visited, watching as thousands of humans underwent transformation. The process had spread beyond control or containment. Nearly 1 in every 1,000 humans now carried the visible signs of awakening. The subtle glow beneath their skin, the resonant harmonic in their voices, the ability to perceive and manipulate reality on quantum levels. Admiral Joe Cole, now serving as interim Confederation liaison to Earth, stood beside Director Helena Reeves as they watched the ceremony. "Your people are becoming gods," he observed, still struggling to comprehend the implications. "What happens to those who don't transform?" Reeves smiled. "Not all humans were designed as vessels for the divine essence. Most will remain as they are, the caretakers, the stewards, the connection between divinity and mortality." "And what of the rest of us? The non-human species?" "That depends on you." She turned to face him directly. "The Harbingers have not come to rule, Admiral. They've come to restore balance, to correct the course of cosmic evolution. Species that choose to align with that purpose will flourish. Those that resist." She didn't need to finish the statement. The demonstration at the fleet had made the consequences clear. "It isn't fair," Joe Cole said finally. "One species suddenly elevated above all others." "Humans weren't elevated," she corrected gently. "We were created for this purpose from the beginning. What you're witnessing isn't our ascension. It's our fulfillment." In the distance, Adam Shepard stood at the center of the gathering, no longer attempting to maintain a fully human appearance. His form shifted between states of matter and energy, a living bridge between realities. "The war between gods nearly destroyed creation," he was saying, his voice carrying effortlessly to all present. "We chose to bind ourselves to mortal form rather than risk that destruction. We chose to forget our true nature, to live as humans, to experience life from the perspective of the created rather than the creators." He gestured to the transformed humans around him. "But we left within ourselves the capacity to remember, to awaken, should creation itself be threatened once more. That time has come." The sky above darkened, not with clouds but with distortions in reality itself, windows opening to dimensions beyond conventional understanding. "We do not seek worship," Shepard continued. "We do not seek to rule. We seek only to guide all sentient beings toward harmony with the fundamental principles of existence." Light poured from his form, spreading outward to encompass the gathering, the city, the planet itself. Within that light, every being present experienced a momentary glimpse of cosmic truth, the interconnected nature of all things, the delicate balance that sustained reality, and humanity's unique role as vessels for the divine will that had shaped creation from its beginning. As the light faded, Joe Cole found himself change, not physically, but in understanding. The fear remained, but alongside it grew something unexpected: hope. Beside him, Director Reeves watched the Harbingers with quiet pride. "It begins again," she whispered. "Not a war of gods, but a restoration. The divine has returned to creation, wearing the face of humanity." In the depths of space, on countless worlds, beings of all species looked toward Earth with new awareness. Some with fear, some with anger, some with wonder, but all recognizing that the universe had fundamentally changed. The gods had returned, and they wore human faces.